So, what's actually going on in there? There's like a gazillion characters and they're all somehow related, but they also aren't. We're just jumping around several different time periods in several different places, but yet it can all be tied to Oakland in some way, shape, or form. I'm confused, you're confused, we're all confused, but that's what makes there so good. There's no one single story. It focuses on many different lives that are woven together in such an incredible way that leaves us as the audience to piece it together ourselves. So let's try to make some sense of what's actually happening here. No better place to start from the beginning. Here we've got Tony Loneman. He lives with his grandmother and has been making quite the profit off of selling drugs. He may not be intelligent, but he's got some wicked street smarts. Tony also has something called fetal alcohol syndrome, which is a condition that is a result of the consumption of alcohol during a pregnancy term. Tony is already a bit of an unreliable narrator, and we don't know much about him. Not yet, at least. We don't know why he's living with his grandmother, but we can assume that the mother gave him up after learning about his condition. Tony's drug supplier, Octavio, recruits him for a heist to rob the Oakland powwow, which seems to be what this whole book is leading up to. Next, there's Dean Oxidine. That's a fun name. He too lives in Oakland and is applying for this grant, which showcases his documentary about the lives of natives who are living in the city. The catch is, though, he didn't actually make the documentary. It was his uncle's work. So, off the bat, we already have two complex characters who aren't morally reliable in any way, yet we still find ourselves absolutely transfixed with their complicated lives. Now, we can officially recognize that the powwow is significant in some way to the story. Both these characters are attending the powwow, albeit with very different ambitions. Opal Victoria Bearshield and her sister Jackie Redfeather's story stands out significantly from the first two. Their first chapter together takes place in the 1970s at Alcatraz in a form of Native American protest. The two girls stay there with their mother, Opal staying close to her while Jackie is off with some terrible guy named Harvey. Harvey takes advantage of Jackie, and shortly after their mother dies, leaving the girls to the dangers of the foster care system. Jackie gives birth to
two girls, one of which his name is Jamie,
who gives her 3 grandchildren. But when Jamie passes away, the kids are left to Opal, since Jackie was battling an alcohol addiction at the time. Edwin Black is a 30-year-old guy who still lives with his mom and his mom's boyfriend, Bill Davis, who works at the location where the powwow will be held. Edwin is unmotivated to do anything and spends most of his time staring at a screen. One day out of the blue, he decides to see if he can find his father, so he reaches out to every native guy named Harvey on Facebook, posing as his mother to track him down. Wait, Harvey? Isn't the Harvey that took advantage of Jackie? Is Jackie's mother? I bet you were thinking that, but this turns out to be a different woman Harvey took advantage of. This great. That makes things way more confusing. In a way, Edwin's story is kind of like the movie Mamma Mia, where he sends a message to a bunch of different guys who he thinks is his father, pretending to be his mother and trying to discover who he is, except without the musical numbers and ABBA hits. But we are getting somewhere. Harvey is the first reoccurring character so far. Harvey, the real Harvey, decides to meet Edwin at, you guessed it, Oakland powwow. Wrapping back around to Jackie, her story continues as she goes to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where she runs into Harvey. Oh joy. They talk a bit about their past, and Jackie reveals to him that they both have a daughter she gave up for adoption a long time ago, and Harvey decides this is a great time to share that, hey, no way, speaking of kids, I'm meeting another legitimate kid of mine at the Oakland powwow, you should totally come or something. I don't know what really convinced her, but now they're both going to be an uncomfortably long road trip together. Speaking of horrible men, hey, look, it's Octavio again. We see him through the perspective of Calvin Johnson, who works as one of his goons and also owes him a lot of money. Him and his brother Charles and Carlos are involved with a messy business, and they get roped into robbing the powwow, just like Tony Loneman. I'm sure this will go great. Orville Redfeather is the oldest grandson of Jackie, who Opal is officially taken care of. Orville and his 3 brothers have felt a noticeable disconnect from their native heritage because Opal does not give them the space to express it. Orville and his brothers decide to sneak off to the powwow, but not before meeting Dean Oxidine and giving him his story. Look at that. The story is starting to come together even more now. We now see that Orville has made a contribution to Dean's project. Alright, we're finally starting to connect some dots when we reach part 2. Tony Loneman has just bought some bullets for the powwow at Walmart. And Calvin, who happens to be on the powwow committee led by Blue is introduced to both Edwin Black and Dean Oxydine. Yes, it's all starting to come together now. This is great. Dean interviews Calvin, who admits he doesn't really feel native because he doesn't know much about what it's like to be native. He just feels like some dude from Oakland. Oh, and he also admits he was robbed in a parking lot one time on his way to his powwow, so that's nice. Harvey tells Jackie he had a dream about meeting some aliens. Opal finds out Orville had spiders in his leg, just like she did. And we also find out Opal nearly killed a guy named Ronald. Oh, and she had this old flame named Lucas. Lucas, like Dean's Uncle Lucas, look at that! We get an Octavio perspective where he admits that Uncle Six killed his brother and his mother and was sent to jail. Octavio hates his guts, but good thing his grandma is super cool and she tackles a badger for Octavio's medicine box. Daniel, who is Octavio's cousin, is printing 3D guns and planning to spy on the powwow robbery with a drone, which Bill Davis had seen before. He also sends an email to his dead brother Manny, catching him up on life. Blue, the powwow coordinator, turns out to be Jackie's child. She was raised by white parents and got reconnected with her culture by assuming the position. She married this guy named Paul, and he started to beat her, so she decided she would run away. Paul hunts her down, but this old lady swoops in and takes her to safety. Thomas Frank is a musician at heart, but was working as a janitor for some time. He always had the smell of brandy on his breath because he felt conflicted about his half-white, half-native identity. Thomas is soon fired from that position and makes his way to the Oakland powwow and takes his place at the drums. And that wraps up part 3. We still have so many mysteries left to solve, and we have yet to make a conclusion about how all these characters' stories are intertwined. But we're close. What Tommy Orange has created is an absolute masterpiece of a book. It avoids the dangers of a single story, instead focusing on the lives of several city natives who each have their own tales to tell. Tommy Orange says he sees himself in Dean, a collector of stories. These characters are so dynamic. Each have different ways of talking and getting their message across. There wouldn't even be half the book it is without these different perspectives. A non-linear story is realistic. It's immersive. There's a lot of beauty in a story that functions as a puzzle with a random assortment of pieces that comes together to make a full narrative.